So just imagine this is February the 8th, 1940, and you're sat reading the newspaper over breakfast, and there's an article in it that's telling you that Hitler's plan is that by April he will have conquered Britain, he'll have crowned himself King of England, and so Britain will have King Adolf I on the throne. This is not a joke. This is a real newspaper article that was printed in the News Review on February the 8th, 1940. And this is what it says. So it's titled King Adolf. The moronic gentlemen of Berlin who believe everything Adolf Hitler tells them were in raptures last week. Dinned into their vertiginous pates was the propaganda story of stories. On Saturday, April the 20th, 1940, proclaimed this inspired announcement from Dr. Goebbels' minions, the Führer would make his triumphant entry into London. Then, seated on the throne, he would declare himself King of England, Emperor of Germany, King of Bohemia and Hungary, and King of Poland, all at the same time. In the Palace of Westminster would preside jovial Hermann, guns before butter, Goering, Hitler's viceroy. Under him would be 3 stadthalters or governors with power to administer the 3 parts of the Protectorate of Great Britain, England, Scotland and Wales. The next in rank would be the 96 Gauleiters or district leaders who would control the counties. Not many Germans were such noodles as to believe this twaddle, but a loud-mouthed minority in the Nazi Party has come to expect such titbits from Dr. Goebbels' department. It invigorates them and gives them something to bawl about over their well-diluted wartime beer. So, you know, obviously this paper is not taking it very seriously. It says it's a load of twaddle and it's putting it down to Nazi propaganda. But I can't help but wonder where the story came from and whether there was actually genuine Nazi wartime planning behind this and whether the Nazis truly thought that this was achievable. And, you know, from a reader's perspective, this is 1940, so if I'm sat reading the paper, I think I'd be worried. Then it goes on, it says, ridiculous as was last week's story, however, and though it caused most Berliners to snigger, it served Dr. Goebbels' purpose in making people talk, think or laugh about the defeat of England and took their minds off the unpleasant prospect of the defeat of Nazi Germany. To thoughtful people in Britain, it had another value. It formed mind pictures of their fate should the tyrant of Europe ever cross the Channel and establish Nazism in the West. Hence, it steeled them anew in their grim determination to fight to the bitter end the war they never sought. So, you know, a real mixed message here. On the one hand, of course Germany isn't going to win the war. That could never happen. But on the other hand, we jolly better get our act together and fight hard to make sure that it doesn't. And then the article goes on under the title Nazi Britain. What sort of treatment Britons would get under Nazi rule would depend on the caprices of the former Austrian house painter, i.e. Hitler. But from the schemes he has worked in conquered Austria, Czechoslovakia and Poland, to say nothing of the Reich itself, the outline of King Adolf's programme can easily be imagined. First of all, Mr. Jones, Mr. Robinson and Mr. Smith, i.e. your average British person, will be required under state supervision to produce goods and still more goods to satisfy the needs of their Teutonic cousins. Premier de Valera of Ayr, so that's Eamon de Valera, who was the president of Southern Ireland at the time, would be given the benefit of a German army to ensure his country's independence, plus the personal guidance of an advisor from Berlin, a puppet government and an energetic police supervisor to smell out and put to death any Irishman who dared breathe the word republic. On the bleak moors of Yorkshire, Devonshire and in the hills of North Wales, concentration camps would be built for around 500,000 socialists, liberals and national conservatives, including Premier Chamberlain, Clement Attlee, Sir Archibald Sinclair and George Bernard Shaw. Eloquent communist William Gallagher would be no longer eloquent. Appointed to nominal positions in the state, given gorgeous uniforms and high-sounding titles, would be those few members of Hitler's fifth column. So that's Nazi sympathisers who've been living in Britain, who have laboured for the past 6 years in the interests of Anglo-German understanding. Then says Mrs. Jones, Mrs. Robinson and Mrs. Smith would have to have more babies. So that basically means that British women will be under pressure to produce more children. Trade Union Congress Secretary Sir Walter Citrine and his comrades will be jailed without a hearing, their offices closed down and their unions abolished, and the welfare of their members administered by an underling appointed by Dr. Robert Ley, Nazi Labour Minister. Bill Jones, Tom Robinson and George Smith, by whom I think it just means the average British worker, would have their wages fixed at a level low enough to prevent them from buying anything but the bare necessities in life. The Archbishop of Canterbury and his flock would be ordered to pray for the Führer. The Church of England would be merged with the Nazi Reichschurch. Because he is a Jew, Leslie Hoare Belisha, who was the War Secretary at the time, and every other member of his faith would be barred from working for his living, have his property confiscated, be put into a concentration camp, or permitted to depart penniless for some overseas country charitable enough to give him refuge. Ousted from control of the Daily Express would be Lord Beaverbrook if he did not agree to turn it into a local edition of the Volkaiser Beobachter. That was the Nazi propaganda daily newspaper. Every other newspaper proprietor would also have to do the Führer's bidding or quit. Professor Frederick Wolfe Ogilvie, Director General of the BBC, if acceptable in that position to his Nazi masters, would transmit all speeches made by Hitler, Goebbels and other Nazi chiefs, and all talks by Lord Haw. He would have to recall every radio set other than those tunable only to official broadcasts. He'd install loudspeakers in every main street for the education of pedestrians and in every restaurant. Listening to foreign stations would be an offence punishable by death. But Britons could still have their enjoyment. They would be allowed, under the watchful eye of armed SS men, to go to cinemas, to see Nazi films, and Strength Through Joy trips would take them on conducted tours through the Lake District and Scotland. Under the planned Nazi scheme of organisation, unemployment would almost vanish. Unwanted workers would be conscripted into the army and the rest would have to work longer hours, starting at 7 a.m. Half a dozen times each year, Londoners would be commanded to tramp to Hyde Park to cheer the Führer or his hulking viceroy. Journeys abroad would be forbidden except to dyed-in-the-wool supporters of Nazi rulers. The largest British companies would be taken over directly by German concerns such as the German Steel Trust and IG Farben. British commercial representatives overseas would be asked to hand over their businesses to German nominees. Lord Chief Justice Hewitt and all fellow judges would be replaced by German officials who would take orders from the London branch of Germany's Department of Justice. A purge of all private libraries would get rid of political and historical books except those in accordance with the current Nazi ideas on race and politics. Teaching in schools would be under strict supervision with the German language compulsory. Universities would be closed and Germany would provide the Protectorate with its own doctors, lawyers and scientists. Messrs Jones, Robinson, Smith and their families would have to go without tea, coffee, chocolate and such like, but would be able to get ersatz beverages, so that means replacement beverages, advertised as just as good, the implication there being they wouldn't be as good. All clubs and societies, down to the last village football club, would be dissolved and their funds seized by the Strength Through Joy movement. Their members would only play games organised for them by the Nazi Sports Administration. Governor Montague Norman of the Bank of England would be required to hand over to the Reich the Bank of England's stock of gold. Merchant ships would fly the Union Jack but with the swastika superimposed on it. Then the magnificent Führer might top his performance with a plebiscite in which Britons will be allowed to vote yes to the question, do you agree to the policy of King Adolf who has brought you peace? Those who refused or voted no would swiftly and suddenly disappear. And then, having got 99% of the vote for Hitler and peace, King Adolf would set out to retrieve those countries and colonies which were once British and therefore rightfully his. This would mean preparing war against the United States and any other power not seeing eye to eye with him. So the article started off by kind of saying, of course Germany can't win the war. That's ridiculous. It's a load of twaddle. It's just a load of German propaganda. And then it goes on with a really detailed analysis, a quite scary analysis of what life might be like under the Nazis. So, you know, what was the paper trying to achieve with this? Was this about trying to scare people into showing more dedication to the war effort? Or was it something that had happened in Germany that, was the really genuine fear that we might end up with King Adolf I? If you like this content, please take a look at my channel, not history but news. I'm going through a big box full of old newspapers that I found in an attic, and there's loads of stuff like this. So please have a look, and if you enjoy it, please like and subscribe. Thank you.